Hello and welcome to Government Leaders. I'm Eileen Preston. Dan Gessen was just 21 years old when he was appointed by the Falmouth Select Board to become a member of the Assembly of Delegates representing Falmouth. And just a few months later, he won the election. Gessen is also a second lieutenant with the Massachusetts National Guard and just received federal orders to deploy with the 181st Battalion to help them with Inherent Resolve, the operation now in Iraq. Dan Gessen is here with us today, even though he's leaving in just a week. Is that right?
Just a week.
Thanks so much for coming in. So you wanted to talk to your constituents about it, right?
Yes, I think it's super important to be transparent about this process, specifically because I plan on both representing Falmouth on the Assembly of Delegates while I'm deployed. So I believe it's important to kind of explain how that can work and what I intend to do while I'm doing both jobs.
Excellent. So let's get right into it. I don't want to bury the lead. Let's talk about deployment. What does that entail? How did you find out? How long will you be gone? What will you be doing? What can you tell us?
So this is a regular deployment with the Guard, usually on a 5-year cycle with most units in the United States. So it didn't come out of the blue. This is something that the unit builds up to progressively over the course of 5 years in order to be ready to deploy anywhere in the world. The Massachusetts National Guard specifically got tasked with a deployment to the Middle East, and that's what we're going to be doing. So that means on January 25th, we're going to go on active duty orders. About a couple days after that, we're going to get on a flight down to Fort Bliss, where we'll train for about a month and a half before we head out of country.
Okay. And do you know what you'll be doing when you're out of country?
Yes, I do. We're an infantry battalion, and I'm an infantry platoon leader.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to leading a couple dozen soldiers in what our mission ends up being when we get over there.
Okay. And so how soon do you have to, do they tell you you're going to leave, and do they give you orders on what to pack and what not to pack? I'm curious because I'm an overpacker. So how does it work, and how do you tell your family when you'll be back?
So first, we knew that we were going to deploy a little while back, but the details get confirmed as you get closer to the date.
Okay.
So the timeline, we actually got an idea of a little while ago. The packing list specifically, we actually got issued all our new gear in December, as early as that. So, and then we've been packing ever since. So we get a pretty extensive packing list. I think it's about 6 bags. I'm sure it's hundreds of pounds of equipment.
Okay.
And it's your responsibility to bring it from here to there.
Okay.
In terms of telling family, I mean, that's never easy.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about the modern age is there should be ways to communicate electronically with family while we're away. I've had an opportunity to go to various trainings before on a full deployment. So I've had the experience of being away for many months from family and loved ones and knowing how that communication works. But the difference this time around is we actually don't know when we're coming back precisely.
Okay. Yeah.
Probably near the end of 2024.
Okay.
But we'll get a firm date once we're in country for a little bit.
Okay. So you want to continue your services. So let's talk about how that's going to work. You're going to still be an Assembly of Delegate representative for Falmouth. How will that work?
It's definitely not going to be without some complications, as expected. I mean, there's an 8-hour time difference.
Right.
And while I'm out there, my primary responsibility is, of course, to the soldiers I'm leading and to the mission at hand. But I'm far from the first person to ever serve in a dual role like this. I think there's a number of state representatives at the local level. And I think we had Senator Scott Brown, a U.S. Senator.
That's right.
Was a colonel in the National Guard while serving in the U.S. Senate. So I'm far from the first and far from the most important person to ever do a dual responsibility like this. And in the post-COVID world, where a lot of these assembly meetings are all hybrid or
Yes.
some of them are completely remote, I've had some experience with that, and I think it's never been more feasible to serve in these dual responsibilities than it is now.
And I wanted to ask you about that. Since you've joined, it's always been, the Assembly of Delegates has always met on Zoom. Is that right?
So the Assembly of Delegates, since I joined
Yeah.
after the peak COVID point in 2022.
Right? Yeah.
It's been hybrid a lot of
Okay,
the time.
hybrid.
So the Assembly, for the most part, has a quorum in person, and 1 or 2 delegates might tune in virtually from time to time. But all our committee hearings are generally virtual, which is super helpful because that it allows the public to tune in and voice their opinions. It allows us to get speakers from across the Commonwealth in to discuss issues, and it's also just much easier scheduling-wise because everyone on the
Absolutely.
Assembly has a day job.
Yeah.
And we're all from around the Cape.
So you're not in favor of that changing in any way? You kind of like that system?
I think hybrid meetings are great for government.
Right.
I think for big important meetings, having in person, you can't change that. I think there's a certain quality of being able to sit face to face with people and have a conversation.
Yeah.
So on hearings like for the Assembly, when we're actually voting on stuff and voting on ordinances as we do in our bi-weekly meetings, I think that's important to have at least an in-person option. But the ability of people to tune in and communicate and have public comment virtually, as well as for delegates to be able to tune in and even on our select board here in Falmouth, be able to call in as select board members and be able to participate rather than just being outright absent. I think it's super helpful and something we shouldn't go back from.
I do hear you. Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to it. One thing is a little tricky sometimes. People say with public comment, they would rather it be face-to-face, but it is a great benefit to people that they can tune in from home. I think access has increased, and working for Access Television, I believe in that. So, so as far as county government, are you the youngest that's ever been on the Barnstable? Do you know?
I think so.
Okay.
I don't know if we have official records going all the way back, but I would venture to say I'm the youngest delegate to ever be elected.
And so for those of us interested, how many hours of work is it? What exactly do you do?
I would say every single month there's probably 6 to 8 hours of actual in-person or virtual meetings where we parse into issues, where we discuss, where we have presentations given to us, and we officially, in public meetings, go over the policies that are in front of us and consider ordinances. On the other hand, as I said when I first asked for the position in front of the select board and was appointed to it, it's a position like many local government positions that you get out what you put in. So I personally probably spend at least 10 hours a week doing all sorts of research for the role, understanding the ins and outs of the policy. I mean, we get probably hundreds of pages of reports to parse through. So, and I believe that it's super important to dive into it and to also proactively reach out to members in town government and stakeholders in the community to get their understanding on the policies. So you show up to the meeting prepared, knowing what you're going to say and knowing what you need to represent.
Let's talk about your bio. You went to school for government, is that right?
Yeah, I studied political science and public policy.
Okay, at UMass Amherst?
Yes, at the
Okay, so
University
you
of
have a
Massachusetts
BA in
Amherst.
that. And do you have hopes to go further with politics? It seems like maybe.
Well, I applied to law schools last fall.
Excellent.
So I've been slowly hearing responses trickle in. Okay. And that's the goal when I come back from deployment is to jump into law school, depending where I'm lucky enough to get into.
Okay, so you are definitely someone who doesn't like to sit around.
No.
Okay. So as far as your assembly, I'm interested in the subcommittees that you're in and some of the things that you're most interested in. So can you talk about that?
Sure. These are subcommittees that I'm super proud to be a part of and glad I have an opportunity to be on them. For Health and Human Services, I'm an alternate member on that committee. And very specifically, I think, because of our wastewater issues here on the Cape, as well as the housing crisis. Both fall under that subcommittee.
Health and Human Services.
And there's been a lot of good work being done on the Assembly in order to find solutions to those issues. County government's different than a lot of local governments here in the community, and the state government finds itself in a funny in-between. So we always have unique resources and unique solutions that we're able to bring to the table. One of these was ARPA that came in from the federal government. It was about $45 million that we had to allocate for all sorts of projects across the Cape. One of those was $11.2 million for housing projects across the region, specifically affordable housing and workforce housing projects. And that's something I'm proud of being able to do on the Assembly. And right now we're also working through the Aqua Fund, other things that we can probably expand on more. The other subcommittee I'm part of was Telecommunications Energy. The reason I really wanted to be on that one is broadband.
Yeah, so municipal light boards, that type of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
So I first got involved in town government in a large way, being a part of Falmouth Net.
Yes.
I was on the board of Falmouth Net, I still am, which very successfully got a municipal light board created here in town. And they're working on creating, hopefully, a town-run network, but possibly a private-public partnership. And I know they're hard at work to make that happen. But the issue really is we're really underdeveloped when it comes to broadband infrastructure here on Cape Cod, which if we're trying to build out a year-round economy and supply our year-round workforce, we're doing ourselves a disservice by letting huge corporations and huge monopolies decide whether or not the Cape needs broadband.
Right, yeah, okay. So you're very much in favor of that?
Oh, absolutely. I think
Yeah.
it's something that we're going to need if we're going to be a 21st century economy here on the Cape.
Okay, and now you have one more subcommittee, am I right?
Yes,
Health-
that'd be public services.
Okay, public services, and what will that be entailing?
Public services looks at a lot of things. I mean, even some of the housing policies or the Aqua Fund, which is a county resource, fall under public services as well. And a big thing that I'm hoping to do there is expand the public service, which is the Aqua Fund at the county level.
Okay,
The Aqua,
yeah, no, go ahead.
the Aqua Fund is a program that helps homeowners mitigate the cost of having to upgrade their septic systems or connect to sewers, which
Yes.
is going to be one of the biggest expenses homeowners face on the Cape in the near future.
Yeah.
We have a horrible wastewater problem. We have decades and decades of pollution coming from our Title V septic systems that are
Yeah.
seeping into the ground and polluting our bays and estuaries with nitrogen and phosphorus. And the state pretty much told us we're running out of time. And they designated at least 86,000 homes across the Cape that have to replace their septic systems. Either connect to a sewer or replace it on your own dime, which is an incredible expense to some families and homes. But it's something that must be done.
So that's 86,000 across the Cape. Do we know which ones in Falmouth have to do it? And do those homeowners know that they're one of the homes?
I would say most of Falmouth falls in under those, specifically because there's 30 what the state calls impacted areas across the Cape. 14 of those 30 are here in Falmouth.
Estuaries. So
Yes.
they're all around there.
Those watershed areas that the state designated as need to be replaced. So almost half of all of Cape Cod's impacted areas are located here in town.
Almost half of Cape Cod's problem areas are here in Falmouth.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we have a disproportionate share of homes that are going to fall under those watershed plans. The good thing is that Falmouth decided to file for a watershed permit,
That's right, yes.
which means it's going to be up to Falmouth to demonstrate how they're going to mitigate that wastewater issue in town. So
Yeah.
they're going to get to explain to the state, we're going to sewer these neighborhoods, we're going to put in new septic systems in these neighborhoods. The alternative to that would have been for each homeowner that's affected, pretty much most of Falmouth, to have to replace their septic system on their own dime, which just
Right.
wouldn't have been feasible.
And many of the septic systems aren't really going to fix the whole problem, is what I
Exactly.
understand. Yeah, okay. So you introduced an ordinance, and I'll just read it because it's hard to understand. Seeking to expand access to the county wastewater resources, which I assume means the wastewater money, by investing $5 million from the county surplus. So can you elaborate on what this means?
Yeah, absolutely. So
I think we have some water down there if you want to grab some.
I'll grab a
So
sip.
you want to take the $5 million from the county and put it to Falmouth?
yes, so uniquely, the county has a pretty significant surplus that they developed over the course of COVID. The
Okay.
the county revenue runs on home sales, which skyrocketed during the pandemic. So over the course of the pandemic, the county garnered a $28 million surplus that they have to decide what they're going to do with it. My belief is that we should put at least $5 million of that towards the Aqua Fund. The Aqua Fund provides 0 to 4% interest loans
That's
to homeowners on the Cape.
Income sensitive or?
Yes,
okay.
exactly. So income-based loans. So
Yeah.
if you make less than 120% of area median income,
Yeah.
you get a 0% loan to upgrade in line with the new Title V regulations from the state, which is a great resource because 120% of area median income means more than half of Cape Codders are qualified for 0% loans when they have to connect to a town sewer or they have to rebuild their septic system. But my argument is that $5 million is going to give us more opportunity to do more with this program than just these 0% interest loans. For one, it guarantees the program, which is a revolving loan program. So you give a loan out, as it gets paid back, it can be given out to someone else.
Oh, lovely.
So
Yeah.
that $5 million will have an outsized effect over decades that it's going to take to solve this problem because it can be paid out, given back, and
Keep
continue.
cycling. Yeah, lovely.
Exactly. And if we put in our own money rather than using state money in the program, we're also going to be able to reap the revenue from that money. So if you give out a 4% or a 2% loan through the Aqua Fund to higher income earners in the community, that's going to build revenue as if you put it in a high yield savings account every single year. My argument is we need to take that revenue and put it towards loan forgiveness and grant programs for the lowest income households on the Cape. Because without a doubt, there's going to be homes in our community and homeowners for whom even a 0% interest loan, when it's tens of thousands of dollars added to their mortgage, is going to be a significant expense when we're already facing a housing crisis here on the Cape. So I believe that if we turn that revenue around, if we invest in ourselves at the county level, we can really benefit a lot of homeowners through these creative solutions. So I'm really hoping that we can get this across the finish line. I believe the Assembly's on board with it, and it's a question of having the commissioners sign on as well and working together as a county to make it happen.
And what is the timeline on that?
So the ordinance was introduced in June.
Okay.
We've had a number of hearings on it, discussion on it, and the Assembly so far is essentially waiting for the commissioners' next move.
Okay.
What we don't want to see is the Assembly vote in favor of it and the commissioners push back on it, veto it, or just decide not to sit on it and not approve it. So the goal really is to have a collaborative process. So rather than pushing it forward and kind of trying to push it through the system, we've allowed the commissioners to go through their process of what they want to do with the unreserved fund money. And actually last week, they gave us their proposal.
Okay.
They gave us a proposal for what they want to do with it. Unfortunately, Aquafund was not part of that proposal.
Okay.
So the question now is a deliberative process between the Assembly and the commissioners. I assume by the spring that we should come to a decision.
Okay, by the spring, right. And you might not be back then, you'll be back in the fall, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
I definitely
okay.
won't be back by the spring, but I'll
But you'll be
continue pushing it
watching,
hard.
right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, you can watch us online and keep on like that. So I'm wondering about, you're obviously very young, and have you found that to be helpful or a problem? Do you work on that? Like, did people take it seriously? Talking to you, you know what you're talking about. So how has that been?
I found it to honestly be a benefit. I mean, I think some people, when you first say that you're going to run for delegate or you're interested in a role, might be a bit skeptical, but I've been knocking doors here in Falmouth for candidates and being part of town government and town activism since I was 15 years old. So
Okay.
I feel like most people have gotten a chance to know me and give me at least that first benefit of the doubt of like, let's hear this kid out, see what he has to say. But it also, I think, gives me a big advantage because I'm still learning a lot. And I'm excited to learn. I hope I get that across to people. And people, maybe given my age, are willing to teach me, walk me through it, mentor me through a lot of the processes, whether it's first joining the Assembly and having people that have been here for quite a while, John Oman, Elizabeth Harder, others, Susan Warner, be able to walk me through the process and demonstrate to me, you know, this is why we believed in this is how the Assembly works here. It's super helpful, I think, at least to give off the energy that you want to learn, which I genuinely do, and I like it a lot.
An open approach. Yeah, that's wonderful. So I'm thinking about your youth and you're about to do military service, you're doing public service. Is there something in you or in your family? Are you first generation military? So what is it that makes you tick? Because we live in sort of a cynical age. So tell us, what's your special sauce?
I think, as you mentioned, I don't like being bored. I like to always be doing something. So that's definitely helped. But I think not only am I first generation military, I'm first generation American. My parents were refugees from the Soviet Union. And I think from their stories and from family that I've had the opportunity to meet from the old country, I've had a chance to really understand what it was like there and not take for granted what we have here. And I believe it's almost an individual responsibility for people to make sure those opportunities stay available to others. And I get a lot of joy being able to contribute to that. So whether it's through service in the military or through service on the Assembly, knowing that I'm making these opportunities available for others and I'm part of what makes America great, I get to play a little role in that. I love that a lot, and that's really what inspires me for it.
So you're a Falmouth High grad.
Yes, 2018.
And do you feel like you're different from your generation, or do you feel like this generation coming up has a lot of hope and energy for change?
I think it does. I think the unfortunate thing is media, and even social media as well, even though it seems more democratized, really paints a narrative about a lot of things, specifically about generations. Like, these generations might be given up, these generations are very cynical. I think there's some truth to cynicism in Generation Z, as they call it. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of energy and a lot of hope that exists there for something new and different. There's just a lack of something to latch onto sometimes when you look at the national political scene. And you know, the cynical part of me kind of assumes that that kind of cynicism is part of the game that's being played. It's not a byproduct of it. I think, unfortunately, people that don't want to see change, the best way to keep change from happening is by dissuading and disinspiring people from ever trying to do something, telling them that the system is how it is, that's just how it's going to be. You're going to have two 80-year-olds running against each other for president, and that generation is going to run the show for the foreseeable future. And I think giving people something to latch onto is super important. I hope to see that on the national scene. But also, I think on a local level, that's where I get a lot of hope and inspiration from. You see that showing up matters, that people that really get to make the decisions are the ones that show up, are interested, understand the process. There's a big vacuum that exists, I think, in young people being involved in local government. And that's a shame, because I think that would be a big source of inspiration for young people if they saw the difference that they can make on the local level.
Believing you can do it is half the game, isn't
Exactly.
it, right? If you can believe you can change, things do change. You can change
And
things.
I think a lot of our local communities, here in Falmouth especially, but I think Cape-wide, we want to find new solutions. Issues like wastewater and housing, nobody's denying that they exist, and the environment as well.
Yes.
We just are looking for creative solutions to solve them, and people with energy to bring those solutions to the table and fight for them. I think in the younger population, there's a lot of that. I think it's a shame that there's so few young people really left in the community after college, just because how difficult it is to live here and afford to live here. But I really hope more young people do get involved, because there's a great opportunity to make a big difference and to feel empowered in it if you're part of it.
And so if you were to say, now there's a housing issue and there's an environmental issue, you know, climate change, what do you think would be the best thing to solve first? Or do you see something, if we could just get this fixed, the others would follow, or are they in separate buckets?
I think you definitely can't do one and then the other first. I think if we wait to solve the environment issue until we fix housing,
Yes.
there's not going to be any more housing left on the Cape by the time we're going to be swept away. And we also can't wait to fix housing until we fix the environment, because that's going to be out of our hands too. So I think it's important that we're working both at the same time. I think it's important to have resources like the Aqua Fund that make sure that while we're fixing our environmental issue, we're not forgetting about homeowners and the need and the housing affordability question. That we're solving both the issues at the same time and providing enough resources for people to be able to not suffer from one while fixing the other. But I also think that no one-size-fits-all solution is going to do it. It's going to be a lot of hard work at the local zoning level. It's going to be at the select board level. It's going to be at the county level, at the state rep, state senate, all the way up to the governor. I know the governor's doing hard work on and tremendous work through the housing bill, bond bill, to make a big difference for Cape Cod specifically, really, through seasonal communities and the transfer fee. But it's also going to be important that our local municipalities take advantage of those resources when they're given to us. So I think without a doubt, it's going to take a lot of small, continuous solutions and fighting to solve all of them in all these issues simultaneously. And that's why I think it takes people with energy to be able to do it, because it's a lot.
Patience, but really just sticking to the wheel, right? Getting it done. Dan, I want to give you an opportunity to talk right before you leave for deployment about what you want Falmouth to know that we might not have touched on yet. Is there anything you want to say?
Well, I think we touched on a lot of strong issues and big priorities that exist in Falmouth that are going to be focused on. And whether I'm here or I'm on deployment, those priorities aren't going to change. And I'm passionate about making sure we find solutions to them while I'm away and when I come back. But I also just want to thank you for the opportunity to talk today and kind of get the word out about this, because I want to make sure that people know what's going on in terms of my deployment, and also bring attention to these important issues. And also let people know that they can always reach out to me. My email is daniel.gessen, at capecod.gov.
Well, we'll put that on here, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And if there's any questions, if you have concerns, if you have thoughts on what we talked about today, please don't hesitate to reach out.
And as far as you being able to vote on issues, how will you do that? Will you ask the assembly what do they need from you, or how would you do that voting?
I would tune in as you would to any meeting. Since they're hybrid, you vote.
Okay.
In hybrid means I don't think we've had a meeting since I've been on the assembly 2 years ago now that somebody hasn't been tuning in virtually and voting virtually.
Okay.
So I don't see that being a problem.
And you expect to be able to do that. Terrific. So we thank you very much for your service, both public and military, and best of luck to you. And I hope you'll come back and tell us how it went.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and then tell us what more you've got planned, because I think we're going to see a little bit more of Dan Gessen. Thanks very much, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Government Leaders.